Have you ever had this exact scenario happen to you? You know, you sit down on the couch after a long day, you grab your phone just to check like one single text message, and then you blink,
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
right? And suddenly you look up at the clock and an entire hour has just completely vanished into thin air. I mean, you did not plan to spend 60 minutes swiping through videos of strangers, but somehow you did.
Yeah, it's a universally shared experience at this point.
Mm.
And usually when that happens, we just kind of blame ourselves. We
Um,
think, oh, I have terrible self-control, or I just get distracted really easily.
Exactly. We think it's a personal failing.
But the reality of what is actually happening on that screen
Mm.
is so much more complex than just a simple lack of willpower.
And that is exactly what we are diving into today. So, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are looking at how digital apps are secretly designed to control our behavior, change how we see ourselves, and even, honestly, split our society apart.
It's a huge topic.
It really is. And we have a massive stack of sources today. We're pulling from research papers on psychology, technology design, media studies, and even some highly specific analyses of how the algorithm behind TikTok actually functions.
Yeah, it is a deeply revealing set of documents. We're going to look closely at the hidden psychological triggers built into these screens we stare at all day. And we'll look at the business model driving all of this and how these apps actually rewire our brains over time.
Our mission today is pretty simple. We want to uncover the invisible tricks hiding in our phones so you can take back control of your own mind. Okay, let's unpack this. I mean, where do we even begin with a machine that is this perfectly designed?
Well, we really need to begin by looking at the underlying motivation of the tech companies. Before we can understand how the apps change us, we first have to understand what they actually want from us.
Right, and what they want is our time. Because human attention is a very limited resource. I mean, you only have 24 hours in a day, and you spend a third of that sleeping. Yeah, hopefully. So the sources explain that these apps do not just want to casually entertain you, they want to harvest your attention and sell it to advertisers. The researchers actually use a specific term for this: surveillance capitalism.
Surveillance capitalism, yes.
Basically, if you are using a service for free, you are not the customer, you are the product being sold.
Precisely.
Mhm.
Your time, your focus, your daily habits, those are the raw materials. And to keep you staring at the screen so they can harvest that material, these companies have turned to neuroscience.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they need to hook your brain. And they do that by hijacking a natural chemical in your body that you have probably heard of, which is dopamine. But the interesting thing is, there is a massive misconception about what dopamine actually does.
Wait, I always thought dopamine was the pleasure chemical. Like, you eat a really good piece of cake, you feel happy, and that warm feeling is the dopamine. Is that not how it works?
Not quite.
So,
Dopamine is not really about the feeling of pleasure itself. It is actually about the anticipation of a reward. Yeah. It is the craving. It's that physical itch, that feeling of what is going to happen next. It evolved to keep early humans motivated to hunt and gather. But today, it is the exact chemical that drives you to keep seeking more stimulation, to keep swiping just one more time.
So it's not the reward, it's the itch.
Exactly.
Which perfectly explains the whole slot machine effect the researchers talk about. The sources explain that apps use something called variable rewards, because if you opened an app and every single video was absolutely amazing and perfect, your brain would actually get used to it.
Yes, consistency is deeply boring to the human brain.
Yeah.
If you always know exactly what you're going to get, the anticipation dies and the dopamine just drops.
So instead, the apps give us unpredictable rewards. You swipe and see a boring post, you swipe again and see an okay post, you swipe a third time, and suddenly, boom, a hilarious video that makes you laugh out loud. It is literally the exact same psychology as pulling the lever on a slot machine in a dark casino. You do not know if you are going to win the jackpot, but the tiny chance that you might win on the next pull keeps your hand on the lever.
And the speed of this cycle is what makes modern apps so incredibly potent. The sources point out a very specific contrast with TikTok, for example. If you watch a traditional 10-minute video on YouTube, your brain goes through one slow cycle of building anticipation and getting a reward.
Okay.
But if you spend those same 10 minutes swiping through short, rapid-fire videos on TikTok, you are getting anywhere from 10 to 40 separate spikes of dopamine.
Wait, 40 spikes in 10 minutes?
Up to 40, yeah.
That is wild. No wonder regular life feels so slow afterward.
Exactly. When your brain gets accustomed to that level of rapid-fire stimulation, your baseline for what feels normal completely shifts. Suddenly, reading a physical book, Sitting in a quiet room or having a normal conversation with a friend feels agonizingly slow and understimulating by comparison.
I have to push back a little here, though. Aren't these algorithms just learning what we like and giving us more of it? Like, if I constantly watch videos of golden retrievers and the app shows me more golden retrievers, isn't that just good customer service? They're just giving me what I want.
It definitely looks like good customer service on the surface. But the mechanics underneath are much more manipulative than just giving you what you ask for. The research highlights how TikTok's algorithm uses a specific method called the 80-20 rule. Engineers call it the exploration versus exploitation trade-off.
That sounds intense. What does exploration versus exploitation actually mean in plain English?
It means the app will show you about 80% of what it already knows you like. That is the exploitation part. They are exploiting your known preferences, like those golden retriever videos, to keep you comfortable and happy.
Okay, that makes sense.
But the remaining 20% of your feed is exploration. The algorithm deliberately injects weird, completely new, or slightly shocking things into your feed just to test your boundaries.
Wait, so they are throwing random stuff at me on purpose?
Yes, absolutely. They are running continuous micro-experiments on your brain.
Oh my God.
They want to see, will you watch a sad video right after a funny one? Will you linger on an angry political rant for 2 extra seconds? They are constantly mapping the edges of your psychology to figure out exactly what combination of emotions will keep you from closing the app.
Wow. So it is not just a helpful service, it is a machine constantly probing my weaknesses. And it's not just the variable rewards keeping us hooked either. Once they get us into the app, they actually alter our physical environment to keep us there. Have you noticed how almost all of these apps default to a black background now?
Yes, the big shift toward dark interfaces. The research refers to these environmental tricks as dark patterns.
Dark patterns, yeah.
These are tricky digital design choices. They are user interfaces deliberately built to make you do things you do not actually want to do, or to subtly remove your awareness.
Like making the delete account button nearly invisible or, hiding the privacy settings. But the dark mode trap is fascinating to me. On a practical level, an app with a black background makes the bright colors of the videos pop, and it supposedly reduces eye strain. But psychologically, the sources show a dark background completely suppresses your awareness of time passing.
Right, because your body has an internal clock tied to light. Your brain naturally associates darkness with nighttime, rest, and a lack of urgency. The studies show that people actually spend 20 to 30% longer scrolling on apps with dark backgrounds, simply because it tricks the brain into feeling like time has stopped.
It removes that natural physical friction that tells you to go to bed. And speaking of removing friction, we have to talk about the not interested button. Because I swear, I hit not interested on 5 different videos of people making sourdough bread from scratch, and yet somehow, at 2 in the morning, I'm still being fed baking tutorials. It feels broken.
It isn't broken. It's working perfectly. But that button is essentially a placebo.
A placebo.
Yeah. The sources suggest that clicking not interested gives users a completely fake sense of control. You feel like you are the boss, curating your own feed.
But the app isn't actually listening to me.
It is listening, but not in the way you think. When you reject a video, the machine doesn't just say, okay, we will stop showing that. It is actively using your rejection to learn the shape of your psychology even better.
Well,
sometimes what you actively reject tells the machine just as much about your hidden vulnerabilities as what you like. It is mapping your emotional triggers.
it's like being in a casino where there are no clocks on the walls and the exit doors are hidden behind a maze. You think you are walking freely, choosing where to go, but the actual architecture of the building is guiding your every single step. Even when we type our own messages, we are being guided.
Yes, predictive text is a prime example of this invisible guidance. We all use auto-suggest features. When you type a text message and your phone helpfully suggests the next 3 words, it feels like a wonderful convenience.
But the research points out that it actually rewires how we think. How exactly does tapping a suggested word change our brains?
It is really about the path of least resistance. Human brains naturally want to conserve energy. When an algorithm constantly guesses the next word you want to say, and you just tap it to save time, you are choosing the most mathematically average generic response.
Oh, I see.
Instead of taking the extra 5 seconds to articulate a complex, unique feeling, you just let the machine finish your thought for you. Over time, it subtly limits your creativity and flattens your emotional expression.
We literally start sounding more like the machine because it is easier.
What's fascinating here is that Absolutely none of this is an accident. The time-warping dark backgrounds, the unpredictable slot machine rewards, the predictive text smoothing out our language, these are deliberate, highly engineered choices by brilliant designers. The entire goal is to bypass your conscious decision-making.
Okay, so we spend hours trapped in these perfectly engineered digital casinos. But it doesn't stop at just wasting our evening. Because we spend so much of our lives in these spaces, it eventually stops being just a game. It starts to fundamentally change how we see ourselves as human beings. Let's look at how the apps distort our actual identities.
It all starts with the most basic metric on the internet, which is the like button. Social approval is not just a vanity issue. It is a fundamental human need. We evolved in tribes. Historically, if your tribe did not approve of you, you were cast out and you did not survive.
Right.
But social media platforms take that deep biological need for survival and turn it into a quantifiable numbers game.
Likes become a form of social money, and they become currency. And when you are getting paid in social currency, you start changing what you are selling to the world. You know, you act a little different to get more attention. The sources use a fancy term for this, a performative identity.
Yes, a performative identity.
Right.
It means you are acting out a curated, often fake version of yourself specifically for the algorithm. If you notice that you get way more likes and comments when you post angry, controversial opinions, or when you post heavily filtered, flawless photos, your brain learns that this behavior equals survival. So you start doing it more. You literally change your personality to match what the machine rewards.
Here's where it gets really interesting. It's like standing in front of a funhouse mirror. But instead of just making you look taller or wider, this mirror only reflects back the parts of you that other people happen to applaud. And if you stare into that funhouse mirror for years, you eventually forget what you actually look like in real life.
That is a brilliant way to picture it, and leads directly into another psychological trap that researchers call upward social comparison.
Upward social comparison.
Yes, because everyone on the app is performing this perfect algorithm-approved version of themselves. You are constantly surrounded by highlight reels. You end up comparing your own messy, difficult, unedited real life to the flawless, filtered moments of thousands of strangers.
And the sources show this is incredibly destructive. It directly leads to anxiety, low self-esteem, and a totally shattered sense of identity. You always feel like you're falling behind.
Because your self-worth has been entirely tied to an external machine. When your internal sense of who you are relies on the fluctuating numbers of an algorithm, you lose your stable inner sense of self. You become incredibly fragile, emotionally speaking.
And it completely warps how we view the people on the screens, too. You know that weird feeling when you watch a vlogger every single day? They're sitting in their car, talking directly into the camera, telling you about their bad day. You know their dog's name. You know their favorite coffee order. You genuinely feel like you are close friends. But they don't even know you exist.
Psychologists call that a parasocial relationship. The brain is running on very old hardware. When it sees a human face looking directly into your eyes, speaking casually to you day after day, your brain processes that input as a real, genuine, one-on-one friendship.
But it is a totally fake one-way street. These apps trick our biology into forming deep emotional dependencies on influencers. It is honestly no wonder people immediately buy whatever energy drink or skincare product these influencers are selling. We think we are supporting a friend.
It is an incredibly effective, completely invisible form of marketing. So we have established that these apps warp our personal reality, our emotional expression, and our sense of who we are. But if we follow this logic, we have to ask the next, much larger question.
Right. What does this all mean when you zoom out? If social media warps my reality and it warps your reality, what happens when billions of people, all with perfectly customized, completely warped realities, try to talk to each other and live in the same physical world?
Well, according to the sources, the result is severe societal breakdown and extreme political division. We take all that individual anxiety and fragility, and it scales up into collective anger.
And again, it goes back to exactly what the algorithm rewards. The machine learns incredibly fast that calm, nuanced, polite discussions do not keep people engaged. If I write a thoughtful, balanced essay about a complex political issue, you might read it, nod your head, learn something, and then put your phone away.
The app hates that.
Exactly. Putting the phone away is the worst-case scenario for their business model.
Exactly right. Emotion drives visibility, but not just any emotion. Anger, outrage, fear, and strong tribal hostility get the most clicks, the most rapid comments, and the most furious shares.
Yeah, anger gets people typing.
Anger demands a response. It forces you to stay on the app to fight back in the comments. So the machine actively promotes the most outrage-inducing content it can find.
Which traps us in these digital boxes the researchers call filter bubbles or echo chambers. The machine figures out exactly what makes you angry and exactly what opinions you already agree with, and it just feeds you a constant, never-ending diet of that specific content. You never hear a calm argument from the other side. You only see posts that confirm you were right all along.
And living inside that echo chamber creates a very dangerous psychological state known as the false consensus effect.
The false consensus effect. Wait, so if I'm only seeing people who agree with me all day long, my brain just assumes, what?
Yeah.
That the entire world has the exact same opinion I do.
Exactly. Because you only ever see posts from people who share your exact worldview, your brain falsely assumes that your opinion is the undisputed, universally accepted baseline of reality.
So when you finally log off and encounter a neighbor in the real world who disagrees with you on a local issue, you don't just think they have a different political opinion. You think they must be literally crazy or completely stupid or genuinely evil, because how could they possibly disagree when, quote unquote, everyone knows you are right?
And this is not just a theoretical psychology problem, it has massive real-world consequences. The source material explicitly links this algorithmic division to major global events. The researchers look at historical moments like the Arab Spring and the Brexit vote in the UK to measure the mechanics of these algorithms.
And we should be very clear here. The researchers are measuring the mechanics of how information moved during these events. They aren't taking a stance on the politics of those movements, and neither are we.
Right, absolutely not.
We're just looking at the math of how the platforms behaved.
That is right. The data demonstrates that in these historical instances, social media algorithms played a massive role in mobilizing groups by keeping people tightly isolated in highly polarized information bubbles.
Just feeding them more of what they wanted to see.
Exactly. The platforms amplified the specific emotional triggers that drove people to the streets or the voting booths while actively fielding them from opposing viewpoints.
Yeah.
The algorithm just poured gasoline on whatever fire was already burning because the fire kept people looking at their screens.
Hearing all this laid out, it really makes me wonder, if we are all stuck in our own separate bubbles, seeing completely different versions of the truth, and assuming everyone who disagrees with us is evil, how can we ever solve complex real-world problems together?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is arguably the most urgent question of our time. The researchers conclude that this is exactly why we cannot just treat these apps as harmless toys or simple entertainment.
Right.
Regulating these technologies, demanding transparency into how the algorithms work, and insisting on ethical design isn't just about saving us from wasting an hour on the couch. It is fundamentally crucial for the survival of healthy communities and functioning democracies.
We have to demand that the digital spaces we spend our lives in are actually built for human well-being, not just for harvesting our attention to sell ads.
Because right now, the invisible architecture of the internet is designed to divide us.
Wow. Okay, we have covered some incredibly serious ground today. Let's recap this journey we've been on. We started by looking at the business model, how apps treat our attention as a commodity, hooking our basic biology by turning our phones into dopamine slot machines with unpredictable rewards.
Then we examine the dark patterns, like the time-warping dark mode interfaces and the placebo effect of the not interested button that trick us into staying in the app long after we intended to leave.
From there, we looked at the funhouse mirror. We explored how the pursuit of likes forces us to act out fake personalities, shattering our self-esteem through constant comparison, and how we form fake emotional bonds with influencers.
And finally, we saw how those individual psychological distortions scale up, trapping all of us in isolated echo chambers that fuel outrage, create false consensuses, and ultimately tear society apart.
It is a lot of heavy information to process, but understanding how the magic trick actually works is the very first step to not falling for it anymore. Once you see the strings, you can't unsee them.
That's exactly. Awareness is your absolute best defense against manipulation. So I want to leave you with this final lingering thought to chew on. The next time you are typing a text message and your phone helpfully suggests the very next word, or the next time you suddenly feel an intense burning urge to buy a product you just saw in a 60-second video, pause for a single second. Ask yourself, how much of your thoughts are truly your own, and how much were quietly planted there by a machine?
That is absolutely going to stick with me. Thank you so much for coming along with us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you some real aha moments and a new perspective on the device in your pocket. Now do yourself a huge favor. Put the phone down, step away from the screen, and go enjoy a few minutes of the messy, slow, real, unalgorithmic world. Catch you next time.